As you know, we use this platform to share stories of resilience. And today I have a very special guest. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast. I am so glad you're here. Thank you. As you know, we use this platform to share stories of resilience. And today I have a very special guest, Congresswoman Susie Lee. And it took so much to get her here. I'm so honored and I'm so thrilled for her to be here. Congresswoman Susie Lee, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you for doing this podcast. I think it's really important for you to have people tell stories of resilience because all of us have a story of a struggle at some point in our life. So it's really nice that you're taking this platform and really empowering people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But before we jump into it, I'd like to introduce her to you. Representative Susie Lee was born in Canton, Ohio. Now, we do have something in common. I am the youngest of 10 children.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
I know.
Got me beat.
She's a product of the public education system. She attended the Carnegie Mellon University, where she used a combination of scholarship, loans, part-time jobs, speaks a lot to your character, to pay for her education. Susie Lee moved to Las Vegas in 1993, where she became an education nonprofit leader. I just love that. Continue with your passion. She worked to improve the education system, decrease school dropout rates, and provide after-school programming for Nevada students. That was so needed, so needed. You know, I really love this because it's saying here your career taught you to tackle tough problems, roll up your sleeve, and bring people together. And when you say that, when bring people together, I think about bridging gaps.
Absolutely.
I love bridging gaps. You know, Congresswoman is fighting to improve our education system, so important. And our veterans, you know,
absolutely.
promise
We
our
have a
veterans.
Large veteran community here in Nevada.
In Nevada, yes. And tackling the healthcare costs. Thank you. I know you believe in working across the aisle to bring people together. Again, bridging gaps to solve problems, which is why you joined the Bipartisan Problem Solver Caucus. That is amazing. And now you live in Las Vegas with your 2 children. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I know summer's a little bit slow. And, so probably not for you. But tell us, what have you been spending your time doing this month? I saw you've been going around town. You've been talking to your constituents. What are some of the things you've been learning from them?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So, August traditionally is a recess month for members of Congress. So everyone thinks members of Congress are off on vacation. But really, this is a really important time for me to be in my community, to be talking to constituents. I ran into 8 women today hiking on the trails out at Red Rock, got a chance to talk to them. I had a roundtable yesterday talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, making sure that people understand all the great things that are in that bill to help you be able to make the transition to solar rooftop, get a 30% tax credit, to get rebates on making transitions to energy efficient appliances at your home, heat pumps, et cetera. So we're trying to get the word out so people understand just what's in that bill and how they can take advantage of it. So that was the second roundtable I had with that. I went out to Creech Air Force Base. As you said, with veterans, that's such an important issue. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, which the MilCon Veterans Subcommittee, and making sure Creech is such a unique Air Force base. All of the unmanned pilot or planes are flown from Creech Air Force Base. So they deal with quite a different set of stressors. One, many of them have to travel from Nellis all the way to Creech, which is about an hour because there's no housing there. And then dealing with the mental health stress of what they're doing at that base. So did that. Sent a letter to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, asking to get a passport agency set here in Southern Nevada. We deal with so many people who are struggling to get their passports processed in time, whether they're traveling for business or pleasure or school. And so that's just been a big backlog that we've been dealing with. Had a senior event telling seniors about all the scams that are out there and how to recognize them, how to protect themselves. So, yeah, we've been out in the community making sure we're talking to all the people I represent in Washington.
And that sounds very fulfilling for you. I know some people would prefer to go and take a vacation for a month and do, just unwind. But for you, just hearing from your constituents, as you're talking about it, your eyes lit up, you're smiling. So it's very fulfilling and rewarding for you.
Yeah, no, it's the fascinating part of this job. And as you know, everyone has a story. Everyone has a history. Everyone has a stress in their lives. And so it's been really an honor for me to, meet so many different people. So we have such a diverse community here in Southern Nevada. Whether I'm going to a Sikh mosque for a ceremony or, at a school with a bunch of middle school kids. I mean, there's just so much to do here in our community and so many great people.
I like what you said. I want to transition a little bit. Everyone has a history and a story. And becoming a congresswoman, there has to be a backstory to it.
Yes, there is. So, I think a lot of people who run for Congress, certainly me, really have a story of their own life, which motivates them to run. And, as you said, I'm one of 8 children, a family of 10. My father was a veteran. But, he was laid off when he was 56 years old. I was a sophomore in college. And I needed people to come together and help me graduate and help me achieve what I could achieve. And whether it was a swim coach or an employer or a professor or my boss, so many people just did that extra mile that helped me get through school. And, that having that type of support was so important to me. And so when I graduated, my first job was in environmental consulting. And then when I moved to Las Vegas, almost about 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, I was really struck by, you have the vibrancy of the Las Vegas Strip, but 3 blocks off of the Strip, you have like third world conditions. And so I worked with the former mayor of Las Vegas, Jan Jones. She and I opened our city's first comprehensive homeless drop-in center. And that sort of set me down the path of nonprofit work. And from there, I was the founding director of the After School All-Stars, which is a program providing after-school sports for free to middle school students here in Southern Nevada, 15,000 students. And then I had 2 children, and I stayed at home with my kids and raised them. And then I got back onto the nonprofit circuit, I guess. And I came in and as president of Communities and Schools, which is a dropout prevention program. And so it's through that work that you see it's so important, impactful, and fulfilling to help people. But you also see that policies coming out of Washington are really preventing people from getting ahead, whether it is not a livable minimum wage, not affordable health care, or affordable housing, or paid family leave. So many of these issues really disproportionately affect low-income families. And so while I did a lot of work in helping low-income children, disadvantaged students graduate from school and set off on a path of success, I found that the economic issues that their families deal with sometimes are insurmountable. And so I felt like I could have a better impact and a larger impact in Washington.
Your bio really do justice. I mean, you just look at it and everything you're sharing right now, it's just in my head, it's just going out, wow, you've done so much and you've accomplished so much. Thank you for everything you've done. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
It's an honor.
Yeah. So I've been stalking you and looking you up as I'm preparing for this. And on your social media, I saw on Instagram that you have helped to implement Wi-Fi into the Clark County libraries.
Right.
And with that, it's wonderful. People loved it. Everybody loved it. But sometimes you have that one or two person that comes off as something negative. And I want to talk about your resiliency for anybody who's listening to this. How does Congresswoman Susie deal with negativity and when it hits you? Because you can get 100 positive comments on that one.
I know.
Comment.
I don't
How do you
spend too
handle it?
much time doing that. Listen, I mean, first and foremost, you're always going to have people. And honestly, I think you have to have a thick skin when you have a political job. And certainly there are going to be people who don't agree with me ideologically, or they just don't agree with the policy. But that's part of the job, right? Because I still represent those people. I tend to obviously prefer if people don't agree with me, if they're kind about it, at least civil, but that's part of my job, is to respond to them as well as people who agree. And that was a great program. It's still ongoing, that Cox Communications partnered with the library district using some rescue plan funding, which we secured for Nevada, to provide connectivity, a hotspot access for anyone who's in need, who can't afford internet service. And so you can go to the library and check out this card, which allows you to connect to any hotspot throughout Las Vegas. And really, it's so important because so many people, whether you're a veteran, I mean, I hear a lot from veterans who, can't afford an iPad, can't afford a computer, can't afford the internet, but they need all that to sign up for their disability, to sign up for their health appointments, everything. And so, or students who, we know students sit outside of McDonald's, especially during COVID, it was really rampant. Because everything was online and their family didn't have the internet, and so they had to sit in their car outside of McDonald's to do their coursework. And so this will, for a year up until June of 24, give them free access to the internet. So just an incredible partnership.
Yeah. So as you're speaking of all that, my mind went to your family. Because you're so busy doing so many good things in the Valley. How do you balance that? You said a couple of minutes back that you took some time off to spend time with your family, but then you went back, into your work. How do you balance that? If someone's listening to this, what do you say to them?
I know. Well, listen, I have incredible children. Nevada, she's 23. She's actually in Geneva working for a nonprofit that, talk about trauma to help sexual violence victims of war. And my son Cody is just starting a freshman year of college. Both of them have helped me campaign. They both are very interested in politics. But yeah, it is a sacrifice. I mean, I miss out on a lot of things because I'm in Washington. But I think they understand. Like they enjoy. It's really broadened their perspective on the world too, because they get to be exposed to a lot of the education about the issues. So it has its pluses and minuses, but fortunately they're a little older now, and so it's not as stressful as when I first started and Cody was in the 8th grade and I had to figure out how he was going to get picked up from school and taken to lacrosse and fed dinner. And, you just need a community of support. I had friends who helped out when I needed it.
Did you say your daughter's name was Nevada?
Yeah, I know. I always joke about that because I'm sort of like, I really wasn't planning on running for Congress, but I named my daughter Nevada. But yeah, yeah, we call her Nevi for short. Yeah.
I love that. I had to go back to that to make sure. So, what do you find most fulfilling about representing your constituents? Through serving the government.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a voice. That's the number one job we have is to be representative. And so, especially I got sworn in 2019. So I had sort of one quote unquote normal year, and then we had COVID. And, throughout COVID, we'd have these long caucus meetings and phone calls on how we were going to respond. And I provided a very important voice on what was happening here in Southern Nevada. Even as March of 2020, when everything was about to be shut down, I remember being on the floor of the House with the Speaker of the House and the caucus chair and just saying, you don't really understand just how devastating this is going to be to my economy in our community. So making sure that we got the funding for small businesses, to make sure that we got the funding for food, and make sure that students had their student loan payments deferred during that time because many of them were not working. And, all of that really was just an example of the type of advocacy that I do. But we also do constituent work in my office. So if you're having problems with passports, we've had over 200 people call my office asking for help for passports. If Veterans Affairs, many people it's a very convoluted process. Sometimes they can't track down their medical records. They need to prove they were disabled to get their benefits. If they're, cutting through red tape is really what we help. The IRS, many people have back payments that they haven't gotten. And so we've been able to return millions of dollars to our constituents. We've settled 5,000 cases of people who've called my office asking for help. So, being able to do both of those things is really just standing up for people and helping them solve the problems that really are affecting their lives on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and talking about that, I love that. Again, your face lights up, and you just lit up when you talk about people. You're such a people-centric leader. And that being said, there are challenges that comes when you're in politics. But being a woman in politics, what are some of those challenges that you face, and what would you say to a young woman listening to this who wants to go into politics?
Well, listen, so many women come up to me and say, I could never handle what they say about you. And, again, I say grow a thick skin on this because people are, it's negative, as you know. Unfortunately, much of the campaigning are attack ads. Many of them are not true or half-truths, et cetera. But just, you got to remember why you're doing the work. And remember what is at stake and why you want that position. Because, standing in Washington and making sure that I'm fighting for people and fighting for working families is so important. But for young people, especially young women, I ran for office in 2016 in a primary and I lost. Many women, when they run for office, they lose the first time, they're like, see, I never should have done it. And so my advice for young people who are considering a career in politics or maybe running for office, most importantly is get out on the ground and figure out why you're running. Like, what are you fighting for? Like, make sure you're meeting the people that you're fighting to represent. And secondly, especially as a woman, if you get knocked down, get yourself back up and do it again. And that, I remember when I first ran, I thought to myself, I don't know how I'd live with myself if I lost. Well, guess what? I lost, and I lived with myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm never doing that again. It was so horrible, all the negative things that were said about me. And then, issues came up that were far more important than my ego. And so I decided to do it again. And so a lot of women don't take that second chance. And I will always say that even if you lose, there's value in running. And you learn a lot from losing than what you learn from winning. And the other thing is, especially for women, campaigns cost money. And so many women who call me who are candidates, they'll open up the conversation and apologize and qualify, why maybe I wouldn't want to give them money. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's no man who would make this phone call and start out apologizing for asking for,
Yes.
Stand up, and be proud of why you're running and represent yourself, because you deserve to be there just as much as anyone else.
Yeah. I forgot what I wrote down. I was going to ask you something. So you said something key. You learned something, whether you win or you lose. When you lost that time, what was the lesson from that?
Oh my gosh. Most importantly was to, especially when you're running a political campaign, was to make sure that you are building a grassroots organization. That, you're not just, you don't keep going back. It's easy to keep going back to people who love you, right? Because you want to feel good. And so making sure that you're getting out to all segments of your community, and that I call it like concentric circles, right? So you sort of have your home, then you have this group that you've always known, but they're going to vote for you anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you got that group's got to introduce you to this group out there, so that these are people who don't know you. So really try to figure out who it is that doesn't know you, who you think are going to vote for you, and make sure you get out in front of them and talk to them. And, just stay positive. I mean, like I said, it's a negative process, and don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. I know it's hard to, but you can't take it personally.
So talking about staying positive, I think it's so important for you and your mental health to keep your mental wellness healthy. How do you do that?
I meditate.
Okay.
I do yoga. I exercise pretty religiously every day. That's sort of like my time alone. I really don't give that up. And lately I've been very protective of my time with my family, making sure that I keep that time, because it's important for me to re-energize during the week. And like I said, I don't get bogged down. So many people and many members of Congress, I see them on their phone, reading through all the negative comments. I feel like in our life, we only have a finite amount of energy.
Yeah.
And you can use that energy to be around things that continue to energize you, or you can make the choice to be around things that deplete your energy. And I try to do the latter, be around things that provide me energy than take it away. And reading negative comments, many of these people, I'm not going to change their mind. They say very negative. Now, if there's someone who has a legitimate concern and says it in a nice way, we'll respond to them. But if it's someone who's just out there trolling my account, I don't really have time. I really can't take time to let that drag me down. So I just try to ignore that and focus on the things that I can be impactful on.
Yeah. Thank you. I like that a lot. So a lot of corporations have core values, but as personally, and I'm sure you do, you have your personal core values. How does that align across the board when you are making decisions for your constituents, and how do you make, you align your core values with whatever decision you're making?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first and foremost is fairness and equity, and making sure that everyone has a shot. And, I think that when I think about my family story, my father came from a broken family. He went into the armed services literally so he could go to college, so he could get on the GI Bill. And, so I value education, because that was sort of always at the core of my family's values, to understand that education is sort of the door opener for you. And then, hard work, making sure and treating people fairly. And, I always say to my children, it takes as much energy to treat someone well as, kind. It takes as the same amount of energy to treat someone kind or unkind. Why would you not take that energy and err on the side of kindness? And I actually think it takes away your energy if you're unkind to people, because it sucks something out of you. And so those are my core values. And when I like in Washington, I'm most passionate about issues where people have an unfair disadvantage. And how do we make sure everyone has the equal chance, or has the same chance of succeeding? And we know so much. We've seen such economic inequality in our country lately. And and there's a saying that it says it's expensive to be poor, meaning that whether it's late payments or parking fees or things like that even an increase in sales tax, which is disproportionately impacts lower income families. So making sure we're having policies that sort of spread the burden evenly and make sure that everyone has an equal chance at success.
And talking about policies, what legislative accomplishments are you most proud of?
Oh my gosh. Well, we just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the most significant investment in history in combating climate change. And whether you're seeing, my family lives in Ohio, they're just talking about some massive tornado that happened there. No one would have ever predicted there'd be such a horrific catastrophic fire as there was on Maui, to a hurricane in California, which is unheard of. Just these incredible weather events that are impacting families all across this country and devastating them, killing them, a loss of property, etc. So that investment was so important, especially here in Nevada, dealing with the drought, dealing with our extreme summers and the heat that's just unbearable. We know what climate change is here. So that's been, I'm proud of passing that. Not to mention, we talk about the climate part of that bill, but also the prescription drug pricing, the cap on insulin at $35 a month, capping seniors' out-of-pocket expenses at $2,000 a year for prescriptions, and then finally allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices, which will eventually lead to bringing the prices down of drugs for so many people. So that big piece of legislation. Another big bill that I was proud of is the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And you mentioned I'm the vice chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is a caucus that is half Democrats, half Republicans. Congress should be called the Problem Solvers Caucus, right? Yeah. But we have to have a separate caucus to be able to do that. And the bipartisan infrastructure bill really came out of negotiations that we did. And we started out really taking this massive bill that had a lot in it that a lot of people didn't like or thought was too much, et cetera. And we got it really down to what, talking about infrastructure. And one thing that I'm proud in that bill, it included my large-scale water recycling act, which releases additional federal investment that will go into projects such as the one that the Southern Nevada Water Authority is embarking on with LA Metro, where SNWA, the water authority here, will invest in this water recycling plant in LA, and in return, we will keep that 500,000 acre feet of water in Lake Mead. That's enough, or enough to support 500,000 homes. And so, instead of, some people have these ideas like, let's build a pipe across the desert. I mean, first of all, that will take 50 years to do. Secondly, why would we pipe water from Lake Mead to LA so we could pipe it back? Let's just keep the water in Lake Mead. So that was important. Mobile Health Care Act to allow health centers to access more funding to build mobile units. We have so many communities in Southern Nevada that just don't have the transportation or access to get to a doctor's office. So this will allow health centers to bring the doctor's office to their neighborhoods. So yeah, a lot of good stuff in those bills.
Yes, it is. And with that being said, a lot of good stuff going on. What frustrates you the most?
Oh my gosh.
There was a lot.
A lot. I think the most frustrating thing, and part of the reason I ran for Congress, is sort of the hyper partisanship, like, and by the way, that's what gets reported on the most, right? Like, no one's really talking about when we're sitting in a bipartisan caucus meeting trying to work on, whether you're talking about the infrastructure bill or, the debt limit negotiations that we helped settle, or, anything that really is trying to work across the aisle, when they like to talk about some of the characters in Washington that like to grab headlines. That frustrates me because people really think that's what Washington is about, and they are really the minority. And, I'm also the whip of another coalition called the New Democrat Coalition. It's the largest Democratic coalition, and it's really the moderate coalition. I mean, we are the people who try to find answers to questions, and try to find solutions to the problems. And we do work with the Republican Study Group, which is another, group that wants to work across the aisle. And so that frustrates me, that what you're seeing on TV is not 100% what's happening in the Capitol.
It's why I wanted you on the podcast. Let's get a little of the insiders information. What happens inside?
Right?
Yeah. What's really happening? But I love that, and I love the way the podcast is going. But what is your why? Why do you do what you do? It's really hard what you do.
Right. Well, listen, I started out doing what I do primarily based on my nonprofit work, making sure I was being part of an answer to federal policies that primarily help people escape poverty or have a middle income, great quality of life and a dignified retirement. And now, especially after January 6th and the attack on the Capitol and the insurrection, and sort of the laissez-faire response to it, especially by some people. I don't want to get super political in this, but, just sort of it wasn't that big of a deal. It was a big deal. And, the basis for our democracy and why this country, it has been so great and is great, is because of the peaceful transfer of power. And that was interrupted, and that was disrupted, and there was an insurrection. And so now I'm, literally fighting to preserve our democracy. And so I feel that staying in the seat puts, one person in that seat who really wants to stand up to make sure that we have fair elections, that we honor those elections, that we protect the right for people to vote. And so that's, I continue to stay in the seat, not, 100%, but that's a big reason for that as well.
Yeah, preserving democracy is a big why.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes, it's a loaded statement.
Absolutely.
A lot that goes behind it. So what would you say to, someone young who wants to get into politics and they want to make a difference and a positive impact, but they're afraid to because sometimes we have such stigmas about politicians. what
You're
would
right.
you say, especially to a young girl listening to
Yeah,
this?
well, listen, I always say this to people, especially like I, graduated from Carnegie Mellon and I speak to those students quite a bit. I say, listen, get on the ground. Like if you care about education, go be a teacher or be an aide or work in a library or even work in a cafeteria. Like get on the ground and see what's happening in our schools. If you care about affordable housing, go work at a homeless center or a housing authority or, get your hands dirty around the issues that you care about. And then don't be afraid to speak up. And that's the thing I like about Nevada in particular, especially Southern Nevada, is you don't need a name. You don't need, if you care about something and you speak up and you're excellent at what you do and exercise, some type of authority, people are going to listen to you. And so I would say start on the ground. And then I think it's important to just make sure you're building your relationships along the way. And, life is about relationships. It's about making sure that if you want to eventually run for office, that you start building your resume, join some planning commissions, try to get on, some school, your teachers PTA,
yeah.
And then get leadership positions in that. And that really sort of helps build your leadership credentials. And one thing leads to another. It really does.
Yeah. Congresswoman, is there anything you want to say to your constituents?
Thank you. Thank you for reelecting me. And it's an honor. It's an honor to serve you. And I hope that, we can continue to serve you. And if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call my office.
Yeah. And do you have a takeaway for our audience? Or
Well, listen, I think that, like I said, that I always say to my kids, when you confront someone, we're in a society right now, and I feel a lot of people are just feeling a lot of this negativity. You see it on TV, you see it on social media, and, you see it with people. And I always say, especially to my children, you never know what's going on behind their closed doors at home.
That's right.
And, so treat people with a little bit of compassion and understanding that, there might be something they're not telling you about, but it's weighing them down. And so give people the space to, be able to be vulnerable and, and understand that we're not all doing 100% great.
Right.
That some of us might be going through some tough times. So, but yeah, and you have such a great story and of
Thank you.
resilience. And just thank you for having me on this podcast. Thank you for doing the podcast and being such a role model for so many people. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I know you're very busy, so I appreciate this time that you give me to come and share your heart and share your story, your story of resilience. You're a very resilient woman, and I am so honored and thrilled that you're here today. So with that, it's a wrap. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.